So, hello. You're going to have to forgive me on the format. I'm going to present this first like this just to explain the two different situations that go on when we are under attack. So there's multiple layers of defense to almost every Israeli home. Many have walls. They're not necessarily locked well, or they're deteriorating just because desert environment. We lock the doors, of course, and then there's gates we can pull across that can also be locked. I think the most obvious way I can show this to you is, of course, here. I'm currently in our bomb shelter. I'm just going to show you real quick what we have around here, right? And here is the door that we seal depending on the attack. So, the way that this normally works in the past, I've been here for about 8 years. So usually there's a collective bomb shelter, and then in houses there's an internally built one that is reinforced. Those are actually designed for sort of smaller munitions, explosives, that sort of stuff, or debris that can potentially impact it. Normally, the only thing you need is water, and maybe there's an extended stay depending on how long the missile attacks are, especially if it's like every 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes. The problem, though, is in the current situation is these bomb shelters are not actually designed for IBMs or intercontinental ballistic missiles. And some of the problems are, for example, when normally you would want to seal the door, when you have a giant pressure wave that's actually hitting the interior of the structure and there's no release for it, it can cause a sort of internal rupturing of the organs. And even though there's no maybe necessarily explosion because it's happening so far up in the sky when they're intercepted, or if they explode, or if they hit a nearby building and then the shockwave happens, like with the Beersheba missile, there are certain steps you can take to mitigate it. Now, this is not the most structurally fantastic bomb shelter. For example, there's a window here, so we have to worry about if there's a concussive blast that there could actually be glass shards that hit us. Now, in our case, what we do is we lay a blanket on the ground, and I'll show you basically what I do. I know it's relatively preemptive, but the goal is to try to reduce the amount of concussive force that your body's receiving so that you can actually mitigate the actual organ damage. Usually we sit. Sometimes we've done this with a sort of stool or chair where we're sort of suspended and then the ground is padded, of course, and this can mitigate it. There's a lot of clothing because, of course, we use the bomb shelter as a closet, but this is actually really good for also soaking up any of the kinetic impact. Now, in our case, what we do, because we also have the cats, is we create a vent by opening the door, mainly because if the pressure wave is contained within the actual reinforced walls, this can cause even more organ damage, and a lot of the times of the deaths during the last Iran war happened in the bomb shelters, especially the community ones that are especially reinforced, because they sealed it. What you need is a release valve to allow it to exit. And of course, because there's glass, this can also stop it from, impaling and lacerating you, which, then you need medical attention. And chances are they've already bombed the hospital. So you're going to be in a long line. And it's not a great situation. In this case, it also lets the cats come in. The majority of these sort of strikes, they've been very safe. We can hear the booms probably around 10 to 20,000 meters up. I want to say meters. They're very high. So when we feel it in the ground, that's when we know it's near. We actually had a missile that fell in the school that's a street over, and that actually didn't detonate. But it's a street over, so we have to be prepared every time we have the warning siren that tells us to stay near the shelters, and then the actual different blaring warbling noise that you can find online, or maybe in a future video I'll post it if it happens again. But we're fortunately in a period now where the strikes are, I think they've been lessened by as much as anywhere between 85 to 90%. So there shouldn't be too many videos of this. But for other people who are experiencing this, people in Tel Aviv, people in Haifa, we're in Beersheba where there's American Air Force bases and things like that, and a lot of the F-35Is that are staged come from this sort of general southern region. So they're always sort of targeting out here and that kind of stuff. So for others who are experiencing this, these are precautions you can take. You can put on a jacket, it's nice and thick. It's still cool here, and this can also offer additional protection. Now you don't need to like tape up your arms with pillows, that kind of stuff. It's not going to help you like that. You're not talking like a shield. What you're looking for is thicker fabrics that can enable it to absorb the shock before it hits your body, so it can mitigate the damage. Putting on 100 blankets is not going to help you. This is really more of a how do you pad the situation and allow a release valve for the IBM shockwaves to actually exit the structure in a way that won't necessarily concentrate within your own body. So remember, there's a difference between the small arms, which these structures are built for, and then the actual IBMs themselves that they can basically rock an entire neighborhood. So when that happens, you need to be aware of where the vibration is coming from, because it's going to come from the surface, and it's also going to be coming from external factors. And if you have unsafe points such as windows, even though ours is behind a shielded sort of lock layer, you still need to be aware that that concussive force can pass through it and then blow glass out. So this sort of stuff can be very protective for any sort of collateral debris that can hit you. And of course, I'm making this video not for attention. I don't want anybody's pity. I've been through many of these. We once had a period where there was over 5,000 rockets in 1 month back in 2018 or so, 2019. I was still taking business calls. So I don't want you to think that this is something to panic over. It's something to take serious because, of course, your life matters and the safety of your loved ones, whether it be family members and your kids to your pets. We try to corral the cats in, but they're cats. So what can you do? We usually have around 3 or 4 that hang out with us during the sirens. Um, that being said, the other stuff that can help is toiletries. If you're in an extended stay, such as what happened during October 7th, or alternatively, things like having water and snacks and books to read can also be helpful. And of course, we have many, many, many books. So the goal is to not panic and to be prepared and to pay attention to the alerts. They're very, very audible, and to try to take care of your loved ones and yourself. So I want to thank you guys for watching. This is just an American perspective on the situation here. I've been in Israel since 2016. I've been through this plenty of times, and this is a very good way to stay safe. Thank you for watching.